Welcome to episode 3 of Professor's Research. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about Triumphant Light, some of the new cards that released alongside it, and how it's impacting the meta. Today, I'm here with my co-host, Jake, and of course, as usual, we record 2 of these episodes at once, so if you want to check out another one, there is one going live at the same time on his channel.
Yeah, let's do it, dude. Let's get into it.
Yeah, the first card that I think we should talk about is Arceus EX. This is taking over the game right now. This was like the cover card 2 of Triumphant Light, and I know a lot of people are splashing it into most decks because they actually built a unique mechanic around this card called Link. Actually, that's what I'm gonna call it. But all of these Pokemon like Crobat, Heatran, they all pair with Arceus really well. And the first deck list that's been really dominant is one that actually doesn't link with Arceus. Instead, it's actually just reliant on its Ultimate Force attack. So Ultimate Force does 70 base damage for 3 energy and then 20 more for each bench. So it can do 130 damage potentially. And the number one Arceus deck that's been performing really, really well is Arceus combined with Dialga, because Dialga, you use Metallic Turbo, you can put energy on Arceus, then go into it, attack with it. They also use Mew in some builds because it can just be an alternative target for Dialga. Or they even use the new Shaman and the old one to heal and the new one to retreat really fast out of Dialga. So what do you think about this deck list?
Yeah, I mean, this has been one of the most popular and winningest deck lists from the new set. I actually love that Dialga is kind of back in the conversation because I felt like in Spacetime Smackdown it just kind of underwhelmed. Like it had its moments, but Palkia seemed like much more of the threat. It was in way more decks. Darkrai was obviously all the rage. Arceus is a really interesting card because obviously, given that it uses colorless energy, it is extremely splashable, as you said. And then, yeah, it also can't be affected by special conditions, which is minor, it feels like, but in a way, given that we see so much Arceus, it really shifts how many of those decks you're going to see as well. So this is a crazy strong card. This is obviously a super powerful deck. With the win streak event happening, I think this is going to be a very, very popular combination for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's just so easy to pilot too. You know what I mean? Like it's just Metallic Turbo, Arceus, win the game. It's that easy. And it's crazy. You mentioned Darkrai. Darkrai was so popular the last update, and now it's really nowhere to be found. I mean, I'm looking at tier list right now, and I see Darkrai Magnezone is tier 3.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It dropped like, it's actually insane. Like what do you think the reason for that change is?
Yeah, I guess it must not run into any good breakpoints with Arceus, right? It also was like you had this thing powering up Magnezone in some really great ways, but Arceus is an interesting card because it has 140 HP, with Cape obviously 160, so it's going to survive a lot of the swings that deck could kind of throw at it, and then also you're setting up a lot of ways to get through any of the walls it used to have. I feel like walls are less potent kind of than they used to be. It feels like once a Pokemon makes it into play outside of some of the ways that can heal it, it kind of doesn't leave because of Cyrus, right? So It does feel like the second you can get to anything in like a Darkrai deck, you're able to take it down pretty fast. Also, I do feel like I'm seeing a ton of Leafeon and Celebi and stuff, which is not great for Darkrai either.
And I think that's what we should transition to, talking about Leafeon right now, because Leafeon is a super cool card. It's a new EX, and it's a stage 1, so that means you can get into it really, really quick. It also has a very cheap attack, 3 energy, 70 damage, but it's technically, in my mind, I don't look at it as 3 energy because it has the ability Forest Breath.
Yeah.
Once per turn, you can place a grass energy on any of your grass Pokemon. So it can boost itself up, so it pretty much just costs 2 energy to do 70 damage. And it's a really good new support card that you can put in a lot of grass decks with Celebi. I mean, you can even use Leafeon in any type because it generates its own grass energy.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, something you and I talked about with Magnezone like a couple weeks back was sort of how impactful that card was because it was a battery generating its own energy. And Leafeon is the same thing. It actually isn't as good at generating its own energy because it does need to be in the active spot, but it has the added bonus of being able to power other grass type cards. So that's why you're seeing it with Celebi. You could really see it with a ton of the roster that uses, grass energy.
Yeah.
I like Leafeon a lot. I actually like it more than Glaceon, even though its attack does less damage. The fact that you can ramp this thing up so fast is pretty incredible. And whether you're going turn 1 or turn 2, you're set up really quickly, right? If you're going turn 1, on turn 3 of the game, you evolve into Leafeon and you have 2 energy attached to you. If you're going turn 2, on turn 4, you evolve into Leafeon and have 3 energy attached to you. So it's just crazy, crazy good. It attacks super fast. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of this like hybrid support as well, which has been really cool.
Yeah, I mean, people are pairing it with Celebi and not running grass energy because Celebi only requires 1 grass, same with Leafeon. So they'll put Celebi on the bench, they'll put energy on it with Forest Breath, and then start putting water energy on it because now we have the brand new card for water support. Like, we didn't have enough, right? But Irida pretty much says if you have a water energy attached, you're going to heal that Pokemon for 40, and you can heal as many. So you can heal technically your whole entire field for 40 in 1 turn, which is only 10 less HP than Erica, but Erica only does that for 1 Pokemon. But now that we have Leafeon and Celebi running water energy, that means you can have 2 Iridas and 2 Ericas in your deck. So, like, if you don't have a sweeper that deals more than 140 damage, and if they're running Cape, you have to deal 160. If you don't have something that does that in 1 shot, they're going to get a guaranteed heal off at least. So that's why this deck is, I believe it's, yeah, I would say it's about tier 2, tier 3 right now. So Leafeon is extremely helpful for that, and you can throw it in colorless. Actually, no, you can't throw it in colorless because it only targets grass, but you can throw Irida in any colorless deck too. She's being run in a lot of different decks. Like, I know I recently played her in a Snorlax Staraptor deck, which not meta, but like, you can just throw her in there, and then it's just some extra healing that your opponent has to be aware of, which is kind of insane that we receive something like her really early. I mean, I don't hate it. I actually think it's a really fun, cool card. But it's also crazy that they just gave more support for water decks. I can't believe that.
I know water decks really do feel like they get so many good things. One thing that has been cool about seeing this is you do start to see less and less water decks needing to run Misty, which is weird. Like, naturally Misty is kind of moving out of the conversation just because, other support cards are really good. And Irida is kind of a cool counter to Cyrus in a lot of ways. If something's been damaged, like let's say by Darkrai, it's just been hit by that 20, or you've been hurt by Druddigon or something like that. Just with 1 water energy, you have now taken that Pokemon away from being able to be Cyrus, which is a really cool counter because Cyrus is it's from the last set. It's so unbelievably powerful, and it does change the way you're able to play with certain things. There are times I'm playing where I just think, well, I can't retreat this card, like whatever it is. Like, I'll never be able to retreat this because every deck runs a copy of Cyrus that will bring it back out. Irida actually does counter that a bit, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll receive more and more cards that make Cyrus less relevant. It's always going to be relevant, of course, but people are really frustrated right now because it's a game ender, and it's in every single deck. I'm sure every deck that you check is going to have it. So people are a little bit frustrated about it, but it'll change. Just like Misty, like you said earlier, we're seeing it kind of phase out of the meta right now. Another good combo that's been doing well is Arceus combined with, is this? Oh, yeah, Arceus Greninja. It looks like, Arceus is just being splashed in. I'm looking at the tier list right now. It's being splashed in with everything. It's so good because it's colorless. You can just kind of, it's like, do you remember when Mythical Islands came out and Mew was thrown in?
Of course. Yeah, this really does feel like that. And yeah, like you mentioned earlier, like with Mew, it's also very, very good. There aren't a ton of decks that wouldn't like having a Pokemon that requires any type of energy and could attack for 130 damage. A lot of people have said it's a much better Pikachu, right? It requires 1 less energy, obviously, and it has 2 retreat costs, to be fair, but it has more HP and it swings for 130, which does KO a considerable portion of the roster.
Yeah, and that's insane because it's only been a couple months since Pikachu was in the meta, and now we have something that's just a better version of it.
Yeah.
And colorless. Another thing that I want to talk about is the fact that Sudowoodo is propelling Rampardos to pretty much tier 1. I don't know if you've seen tournament results recently, but this card Sudowoodo is a new basic, and it's like kind of like Skarmory but for fighting types. It knows the move Fighting Headbutt, 1 energy, 20 base damage, but if your opponent has an active EX, it does 30 more. So that's 50 damage, and people pair it up with Lucario, obviously. So you can do 70 damage with 1 attack, and Arceus is weak to fighting. So that means 90 damage for 1 energy with Sudowoodo. So it's been farming Arceus right now, and it's so cheap. As well as Lucario being 2 energy, you can actually end up attacking with Lucario. Sometimes you can throw it in with Marshadow. Rampardos is also 1 energy for 130 damage. So I've seen this deck dominating recent tournaments for a good reason.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. It's like, it's such a nice addition for fighting decks, because this is a slot that you could have easily had Hitmonchan or something like that. But just the extra threat of if your opponent happens to start, you know, with an EX, which happens all the time, right? You don't know what basic you're going to get thrown. You happen to start with an EX, especially Arceus EX. You are swinging for 1 energy. You are swinging for 70 damage without Lucario or anything. You're just smacking Arceus for 70. It is crazy powerful, and yeah, it's great for fighting decks. And given that we see so much Arceus, obviously something like Rampardos that literally is a 1-hit on Arceus. Even Arceus with a cape, if you have Lucario or something like that, it's a 1-hit. Giovanni brings it to 1 hit. Like, yeah, Rampardos got such a huge buff, given that Arceus is just so powerful. And then you pair it with a really amazing starter Pokemon here, a really amazing basic like Sudowoodo. That deck is crushing it.
Yeah. It's it just gives a lot of flexibility and good early game. And there's so many decks that like to start with EXs in the active zone. You got Dialga, any of the birds, like Charizard, for example. Charizard's kind of fallen off a little bit too because of that. Also, Galate. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through here looking at these. Galate has actually been doing insanely well in recent tournaments. And I guess it's just having Arceus. I don't know what to call it, Arceus or Arceus. I've been switching between the two of them. Chat sometimes yells at me.
I think it was from Legends, like the Pokemon Legends game, you get something called an Arc Phone. And that's, for a lot of people, that's what like solidified it to being Arceus rather than Arceus, because otherwise that would be an Arse phone. So I think that was like where that kind of came down. I used to say Arceus all the time, but now I've been conditioned to say Arceus.
Okay, because I always say Arceus, but I get a lot of comments saying I'm pronouncing it wrong, so that's good to know. Told you so.
One of my favorite things in Pokemon is no matter what you say, you're pronouncing it wrong. And I'm sure a lot of the time you are, but dude, no matter what I say, I pronounce it wrong. I try my best on every Pokemon, I pronounce it wrong, so I say Arceus now.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to stick with that. We confirmed it. I don't want to hear anything in the I'm joking.
Yeah, in the comments, let us know. Is it Arceus or Arceus? Let's go.
I'm scrolling through a couple more of these decks here. I mean, Articuno is performing really well. Just single Articuno, like, 18 trainer.
Yeah.
Because of Irida, obviously, she's boosting that a lot too.
You know what's actually doing okay? I wanted to talk about, interestingly enough. There hasn't been a ton of it, but Palkia has been showing up here and there and doing well. It's been doing well with Articuno. It's been doing well with Starmie. So Palkia does still seem to be a force in the game. And I think a big reason for that is obviously it was already quite good. And then Irida just being able to get thrown into any of those decks gives it even more survivability. So Palkia still seems to be a little relevant.
I think it's a little relevant, but it's on the verge of falling off. Like, I don't know if we're going to see it after the next pack drops, you know what I mean? Unless like they release some crazy fire support or something that pushes that into relevance. But yeah, I do agree. I think it's still being used, and Irida only helps it. But I do feel like it's on the verge of falling off. I mean, if you attack, do 150 damage, and then you lose 3 energy, it just doesn't seem. I mean, they do have Manaphy right now, but the problem is with Manaphy is you typically lose it early, right? It only has 50 HP, so you lose it early, you lose a point, and then you go into Palkia, the attack, you lose all your energy, and then you really don't have any follow-up. That's what I noticed with that. And I want to, okay, so this is not in the meta, but this is also a new card that I have fallen in love with. Okay. And it's Obama.
Yeah, Abomasnow is, dude, I actually really like this card too.
Yeah, I recently played with it on stream, and I had a great time. I think I went on like a 9-win streak with it. And I was telling my chat, I'm like, why don't we see this more? Because first off, the weakness of people said it's just a weaker Starmie EX, right? Because it does 10 less damage and the same amount of energy, and you need Arceus in play. But my reasoning for why it's actually better is that you end up boosting it with Manaphy. You boost it, and then you also boost like Arceus, because you can target colorless with Manaphy too. So you end up losing Manaphy like 90% of games early in the game, because you want to get as many usages of it as you can. And then you send in Abomasnow, you do damage with him, maybe you score a point, most of the time you score a point, and then you end up losing him too. But if you had Starmie on your bench instead, you cannot afford to lose Starmie because it's an EX and it's worth 2 points. So even though it has no retreat cost, you can retreat it. Cyrus exists in the game now, which pretty much makes there's a reason we don't really see Starmie anymore, because previously, before Cyrus was in the game, you could just retreat it for no cost, go into something else, and it would be safe on your bench, but it's currently not safe. So if you lose Manaphy and then you lose Starmie, you lose the game. But with Abomasnow, 2 energy, 80 damage is fantastic. It also has 120 HP. It's somewhat tanky. Usually you're able to score a point with it. They destroy it, and then you come out with Arceus, and you pretty much just end the game with its 130 damage attack. So I actually feel like it's a better version, and I'm surprised people really haven't been playing it, and I haven't really seen it be used that much in tournaments.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting cards where and I totally agree with what you're saying, right? Because when you are looking at your decks, you have to decide where you're giving up your points. And if you're running something like Starmie, well, it's really hard to also run Manaphy, like you just said, because now you have all of your points gone. There's Manaphy is 1, Starmie EX is 2. But with this deck, you have Manaphy, you have Abomasnow, there are 2 points, and then an additional 2 for your Arceus EX. I'm fully with you. I think it's pretty solid. I'm guessing it's just running into those issues where, and this is like a pocket issue in general, right? Where it's like, it's either you are KOing something or you're not. Because if you're not, that's really not ideal. This is why Charizard has like so many good matchups sometimes, is just because if you can get rid of something, you can get the points. That's huge, especially with these, Irida decks all over the place, tons of ways to recover HP. It is always tough when something does 80 as opposed to what you were hoping for is like 150. But I agree with you. I played it as one of the first decks in the new set. I really liked it.
Yeah, because you can do 80 damage really cheap, and then even if you don't destroy him, he ends up taking an L, and then you send in Arceus, and then that finishes them off because they're already down 80, and even if they heal 40, you're probably within lethal range of 130 damage, So I feel like it's a good combo, but maybe it's also a little inconsistent because you do need Arceus in play for its attack to cost 1 less, so it is reliant on having another Pokemon. But I mean, we see a lot of other cards like that. For example, we have the new Crobat, which allows you to do damage from the bench, which I've seen do decent in some tournaments, but again, it suffers from the same issue, is that it has to be linked to Arceus, and it's also a stage 2. I've seen people run it alongside Darkrai, but for me, that's so many Pokemon you need in play you need like the perfect combo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When you do get it off, you're going to win the game, but it's hard to get all the pieces in play at the same time.
Yeah, the Abomasnow kind of, I mean, there's another Arceus deck. I mean, this whole set is like really all about Arceus, right?
Yeah.
There's another Arceus deck that's been doing pretty well. A couple variations of it too. Like there is a Crobat version of this. There's a Heatran version. The Arceus Carnivine is actually doing pretty well. It kind of reminds me of the Abomasnow almost, just without the necessary stage 1, and with the fact that Carnivine only requires 1 energy, it's a lot easier to power up that big hitter in the back line, right? So it's a lot simpler to set up Arceus, but obviously, with the other set, you're running Manaphy, so you get that extra energy there. So I do think Carnivine is like a cool option for it too. I love that this set came out, and it's kind of got its own unique flavor on so many cards, and I do think that we are not, I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard, like, as a community to, like, fully explore every single combination, like, things from Mythical Island and things from Genetic Apex that could be doing okay right now. But I do love a lot of the Arceus decks. I think the Carnivine's really cool.
Yeah, I think it is, too. I mean, it's like Skarmory, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, except you need, Arceus on the bench again. But it's also I guess you really don't need to. Skarmory is locked into metal. No, I guess it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same.
Except you don't need to run tools. Yeah, so you actually have more room in your deck to throw in whatever else you want. I honestly haven't tried it yet, so I don't really have that much of an opinion on it. But I think you're right when you say that the community needs to like play around with some of these link cards a little bit more. I think we've gotten a little hyper focused on the decks that we know right away are good, which is Dialga, Arceus, sorry, and a lot of these other things like Lucario, Rampardos.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are trying them, but when you look at the play percentage for some of those decks on Limitless TCG, they're super low. So that means they're if of course if like 50 Dialgas are entering in a 1,000-player tournament, then they have much better odds of reaching like the top 32, top 16 than a deck that like 2 people really like the Pokemon for, and you know they want to try out. So I think here is Arceus EX Abomasnow. It has a 0.37% share rate on Limitless, which I believe is the play rate, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's very, very low. Let me see. Yeah, I see it right here. Yeah, very low.
So
only 32
only
like 32 decks in tournaments have registered with it. Yeah,
exactly. And then as you can see at the top, Dialga Arceus is 1,168.
Yeah.
So that's like a big difference.
Well, one thing you do got to say though, that difference and that kind of win rate, like what a massive deck. And I feel like
it's true.
Like we did see Gyarados very, very quickly become like a massive deck in Mythical Island. But man, this is the Darkrai Magnezone of the set. It feels like for sure.
No doubt, 55% win rate in tournaments is crazy.
Yeah.
I get why so many people are playing it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying I would like to see other people try different things. But maybe they're not trying it because why would you try it when you have a deck that has a 55% win rate?
Well,
right?
Do you ever get this? Like sometimes I'll be playing it. Like I entered a tournament and I played a super off meta deck, and people were like, "Why would you do this?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to play Darkrai Magnezone in a tournament. I want to do something like kind of fun, kind of different, try something out." But I get it too, because you also see like somebody played Garchomp Chatot in a tournament and they got 0-2'd. So, you know, they have to walk away being like, well, I did try a fun deck, but I lost all my games. So
it wasn't very fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I guess you're right.
But I personally, I'm with you, dude. I'm like fully on board with like, let's try different, interesting stuff. I want to see that. It reminds me of that Urseed tournament when Golem won the whole thing. And I'm like, that's what I want.
Crazy.
I want tournaments like that. They're so fun.
I remember everyone after that was over is like, Golem's the new meta. You got to try Golem in like all of my streams.
Yeah.
And then it turns out it really didn't win much after that.
No, it was like good.
So cool
it was a really good read on the meta, and it was a good read on like there aren't a lot of like decks that play well into it. Also, like people were running Arcanine a lot of the time, and just like it couldn't do anything into that. But yeah, for that tournament, it was perfect, which is actually kind of why I love the tournament system, because you do get to see a deck like that win, and next week, it probably won't.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Whenever I look at, so I just go some days and review recent tournaments, and you'll just randomly see these bizarre decks come like top 8, top 16, even first sometimes, and I think that's just a sign of a really healthy game and a really healthy meta. Because I've played other card games before, and sometimes it becomes super top heavy. I think the most top heavy we've ever seen this game was right when Darkrai Magnezone came out. Everyone was running it, but then after like a week or so, it got countered pretty heavily by Celebi.
Yeah.
But right now, it's just we have so many different. I hope they keep balancing the way they are. People were worried. I did hear some complaints before this pack drop that Arceus, the linking mechanic, wasn't going to be great for the game because it hurts creativity and you're going to be like locked into playing certain Pokemon with it. But it turns out that's not the case, because a lot of people, the best decks are using Arceus without any of the links at all.
Yep. It's just like it's just cool extra flavor. I think it's just it's a way for this pack to sort of differentiate itself, you know? But yeah, Arceus is good enough on its own. So whether you're running it with any of those linked cards or not, it's still really good. However, I guess one thing that is unfortunate is some of those linked cards are kind of not very good without the link. That's, I guess, unfortunate. Like Abomasnow, if you don't have Arceus, we don't have a good Abomasnow. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, if you're a fan of certain Pokemon, you're just forced to play. Like if you're a big Crobat fan, you literally can't use Crobat without Arceus, unfortunately. No. So I mean, maybe we've seen them release certain variants of cards and then just the next pack release another version of it, you know? Like it's insane, but we have how many versions of Staraptor right now? 1, 2,
3 now, right?
Three.
Because we just got the promo Staraptor, which was kind of came out of nowhere. And then the new one, like Brave Bird doing 130. Staraptor's kind of like, it has a lot of different options.
It does. Oh, have you tried Berry yet?
Dude, look, it's weird because like I feel like every deck we talk about, we have to like hit it with the caveat of like, I know it's not the best, but yeah. I love the Berry deck, man. It's so fun.
Doesn't it feel amazing to bring Staraptor off your bench and attack with 130 damage for 1 energy? It's crazy.
It's really strong, yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't seen it more, to be honest. I guess because you need the full Staraptor line, and then Berry might be a little inconsistent. And it also makes Snorlax like pretty decent too.
Agreed.
As a wall. Yeah. Even though it puts itself to sleep, it's not a big deal.
I'm guessing it has not done well in tournaments. That's what I would guess. But, you know, it is one of those decks that's like, it is very cool. I liked Berry a lot. I felt like, Snorlax was actually usable because of it, which is pretty crazy. And Staraptor, 130 damage is really solid. It's a very strong card.
Yeah, it's the same as Arceus, but for 1 energy if you activate Berry, which is nuts. Yeah. So, and it is kind of crazy because if we ever receive future versions of Snorlax or Staraptor, Berry's going to work with all of them. You know what I mean? So this is going to be a card that we'll see linked to those until the end of Pokemon Pocket.
This is just like a weird tangent. I want to talk about Garchomp for a second. What you just said made me think of it. Like, we haven't seen Garchomp do super well in tournaments. Yep. Isn't it so weird? Like, I knew this was going to happen, of course, because I read the card. But isn't it so weird that we have Cynthia, we have a Garchomp, and now we have Garchomp EX and it doesn't combo? Like, I get why, but it's also so odd.
I mean, if it did combo, let's just get this out of the way. It would be like the best deck in the game.
Probably totally broken. Yeah, 150 plus linear attack. It's 1 energy attack to hit anything for 50 is crazy good.
Yep. And then Cynthia just works on any attack. So if you use linear attack in the active zone, it's 1 energy, 100 damage. Plus Lucario, 120 or 140.
Yeah.
For 1 energy, which is like absurd.
That's crazy. But it is weird. It feels like, oh, we got Garchomp, but now we don't get the combo
Why'd
with
you separate them?
But it is, I don't know, part of me thinks that's also kind of, it's kind of cool. Like, something that I've really enjoyed in Pocket is it does feel like decks have a season, and then a card or two also will come out, and all of a sudden something that's like been off the radar for a long time becomes relevant again, which I think is really cool. It does feel like the meta sort of, like, with each pack, it has like a really fun way of sort of unveiling itself to everybody.
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe eventually Garchomp, if like, say for example, there's a super dominant meta deck that you need to build Magikarp, for example, where it has like 40, 50 HP. Oh, actually, no, I guess that wouldn't even make sense because Garchomp, you don't get it till later in the game either, so it's a stage 2. What would it take to make Garchomp meta relevant? I guess just some kind of Cynthia to boost its damage. Yeah,
maybe something like that. It's always tough, right, with a stage 2. This is one of the hardest things. Anything that's stage 2 that doesn't swing for like 150, because even if you look at Tyranitar, which I feel like it would be cool to have a better Tyranitar, but Tyranitar, once it is a stage 2, once it's online, if it's with Arceus, it swings for 160, and if it's by itself, it swings for 130. So
you pretty much win if you get it online early enough.
Totally agree. Yeah, like I was playing Tyranitar the other day. I was a little too down on that card, I think, at the start of the set, because playing it the other day, I actually thought, no, this is, it's hard. It's hard to get online, but swinging for 160 is not bad. And I think the thing that's really nice about T-Tar is Larvitar and Pupitar have a 1 retreat cost. So it's not a nightmare to get rid of these cards from your active spot, which I think is massive.
And then we have Regirock too, which is just, I don't know if you played it with him, but that's a fantastic stall card. You just have that out there. It soaks up damage. I think I had like a 65% win rate with Tyranitar, which was crazy. You just stall, send out 2 Regirocks, and then that's typically long enough to get Tyranitar active with Arceus, and then 160 damage, almost one-shots everything. As long as you're not playing against like I don't know, something that's super tanky,
Yeah.
you're good. You just win the game. So Tyranitar, cool card. I 100% think we'll get an EX version in the future. I don't know when it'll be, but we have to.
We have to. It's too popular. Like, one thing, I mean, this is like super off topic, but I am surprised that in this set we didn't end up seeing Torterra and Empoleon. I'm actually pretty surprised.
Hey, you were right about the EVs though.
I will say that.
You were right.
We got the EVs. We were right.
Except for well, you know what's usable now? With wait, what is it? You just said the name of it. Oh, Torterra.
Oh yeah.
I just blanked there.
With
but Torterra's
Leafeon?
usable with Leafeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Kinda. I guess there's an option there. They were like, you don't need Torterra EX. You just need Leafeon EX. That's it.
Yeah. Try it now. You're fine. Yeah, I mean, they're just holding on to some of the fan favorites, I think.
Fully
Which
agree.
I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I'm okay with. Like, we need Giratina, too. That's another one that I was shocked that they didn't release a better version, because they actually released it. They decided, let's release a worse version of what we gave you before.
This new Giratina card, what were they thinking? It's 2 different energy, which a lot of the dragons, this is how they're built, right? It's 2 different energy. You discard 2 energy when you attack. It has 3 retreat costs. Like, this card is chaotically bad, dude. It's so
3
crazy.
retreat costs. I didn't even think about that till now. Oh my god.
It's so
what
nuts.
Were they thinking?
I have no. If it had 2 retreat, you could be like, hey, this is sort of new Drud, right? It has 120 HP.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the revenge damage, but that's like a really big wall. No, it's 3. I don't know. This card is chaos.
What were they thinking?
I don't know.
I guess. Wait. So Gardevoir generates 1 psychic, right?
Yep.
So, but Gardevoir is a stage 2 also.
Exactly. So you got to get a stage 2. So you could power Giratina with Gardevoir, or you could power Mewtwo. Mewtwo already doesn't get much play.
Mewtwo's so much better. Yeah, I don't know why you'd ever. Rip. Yeah, what happened to Mewtwo? I guess Darkrai kind of pushed it aside.
Yeah, I wonder if Mewtwo can do anything into some of this, right? Like,
I think people just kind of forgot about me or are tired of playing it, but I feel like it wouldn't be that bad in the meta right now.
let's see, Mewtwo, Gardevoir, the stats in the meta right now, that's like most recent, it's not doing great. It's at like 44%. It has been struggling hard since Darkrai. It's just like been completely rocked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe it'll come back. I mean, it's super consistent because they got Slab. Now we got Communication too, so you can get Gardevoir up really quick. But I think maybe it struggles because it doesn't have great early game damage, because I guess Mewtwo for 50, but now there's things in the meta right now that are just attacking right away, like Sudowoodo, Skarmory, other things like that. So maybe it's a little bit too slow now.
Yeah.
But I do like how it's probably, you can still use it on the ladder and do well with it, which is cool. So if you don't invest so much time into the game and you only, you have one deck that you built, I think a lot of them are still playable.
I agree. I totally agree.
Any other cards you want to highlight?
No, I mean, I think we went through a lot of Triumphant Light, a lot of like the cool cards in it. There are still some that I'd like to sort of unlock the potential of. Like, I haven't really thrown Celestic Town Elder into too many decks and stuff like that. But yeah, I think we highlighted some of the big ones, right? Like Sudowoodo feels like a really strong card. Arceus obviously is very, very strong. But there are a lot of cool additions in this set.
Yeah, well, what would you, if you had to rate the set on a scale from 1 to 10, what would you give it?
Okay, so the pros for it is like introducing like a new sort of vibe to the game, like with the power link or the links, right? Between Arceus and different cards. I really like that. I like some supporter cards that I wouldn't expect. I like Barry a lot because I like a card that takes something old that's kind of been bad for a while and makes it relevant. Leafeon's pretty cool. I would say overall, this is probably a 7.625. 7.625 out of 10. How about you? What do you rate it?
That's a very good rating. I was thinking the same thing when you were talking. I was like, I would give it 7.5 to 7.7, somewhere in that range. I think it's a really good.
Yeah.
I like how they introduced new mechanics. They're showing that they're like, they're creative, and they didn't do it in a bad way either. Because sometimes games introduce new mechanics. Like, I played Yu-Gi-Oh back in the day. They introduced something called pendulum summoning. Everyone hated it. It was supposed to spice up the game. It did not work, but this, they did it in a good way. So it makes me happy. We, again, support for older cards too. And we saw just generally some fun support cards too that don't break the game. So yeah, I think I might give it like a 7.7 actually.
Ooh, you beat me. You slightly beat me.
Yeah, I got you. All right, but anyways, that's it for today's episode. Make sure to go check out me and Jake. We're going to be yapping about ranked over on his channel. So if you want to see that, click the link down below. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.